Hi everyone, welcome to our event today. My name is Sheridan. Before we get started, we're going to start with a land acknowledgement. Though we are all gathered at different locations, we would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which our school, McMaster University, stands on is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. The territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. The wampum used the symbolism of a dish to represent the territory, and one spoon to represent that the people are to share the resources of the land and only take what they need. It is important for us to reflect on the history we are part of as members of this university. As engineers, we have a role in society to continue to push for change and innovation, but ensure that the work we do is equitable and fair for all people. With today's session focused on the impacts of ethics in our careers, we hope you take a moment to think about how you can drive equitable change in your daily life and future profession. Thank you for taking the time to do that land acknowledgement with me. I'm now going to pass it off to my co-host, Maya.
Hi, I'm Maya. Welcome to our National Engineering Month event for McMaster University. We're hosting this on behalf of the McMaster Engineering Society. And today we'll be doing a panel of 3 panelists that we have today. The first is Julia LaGrange. She's a biomedical engineering PhD student at McMaster University. Gabrielle Bouchard is a McMaster alumni, and she's a business efficiency consultant with the TTC. And our last panelist is Jessica Brones, who is also a McMaster alumni and is now working as a senior strategy manager at TELUS. So just a few housekeeping rules for our event. We ask that you please keep your mic muted throughout the event. If you have a question for the panelists, we ask that you either put it in the chat or you raise your hand and one of us will direct you to unmute your mic and then you can ask the question. And we would also invite you to keep your cameras on throughout the event to make it more engaging if you'd like. Now we'll get started with a few of the questions that we've prepared for the panelists.
Okay, so the first question is going to be, tell us about yourself and your journey to your current position. So any of the panelists are welcome to start.
Okay, I can go first. Thanks for the introductions. As Maya mentioned, my name is Julia DeLang, and I'm currently a PhD student at McMaster University in biomedical engineering. So I did my undergrad at the University of Guelph, just a little jog down the highway. And that was in biomedical engineering with a focus on biomechanics. So I had kind of an idea that I wanted to do something in the biomechanics realm. And I figured a master's would be a good opportunity to kind of specialize in the biomechanics field and kind of open up some job opportunities for me. And then as it turns out, I really liked research. So I decided to stay for PhD. I'm working in the same lab, and our lab really investigates injury biomechanics. So we look at how the fracture tolerance, of body segments and how to design appropriate protective safety systems. So my master's research was on automotive applications, and my PhD research is in partnership with DRDC, which is the defense sector of the Canadian government. And that's for ballistic scenarios, so protecting against military attacks.
That sounds really cool, Julia. Thank you. Gabrielle, do you want to go ahead and talk about yourself next?
Yeah, I'll go next. That sounds really cool, Julia. That is far cooler than my career path has been, but I'll tell you a little bit about it anyways. In high school, actually, I wanted to be a biomedical engineer. I thought that was super cool, biomechanical. I actually started in science in my first year of university and switched to engineering, thinking that I would do mechanical engineering because I had just watched Iron Man and thought that would be pretty cool to work on stuff like that. I ended up getting more interested in the environment, so I decided to go into civil engineering. At that time, it was split into environmental engineering and structural engineering, but I don't think it's like that anymore. So I went through university as a civil engineer. I was really involved in student youth outreach during my undergrad. through that, I got the chance to travel to most Indigenous schools in the ones that are in the Six Nations, close to Hamilton, and further in Southern Ontario. I also got a chance to go up to Nunavut to teach there, which was really fun. If you ever get a chance to go up north, especially for engineering work, I highly recommend it. And that sort of laid the foundation for my later work as just, you know, young people don't have they don't have the ability to kind of speak out for themselves for a large part. So it really, I wanted to create a space where young people could, you know, thrive in the world. And that's always been my driving force. And it became clear to me through the work that I did, especially up north and in Hamilton, that some young people have better opportunities than others. And the world around us really, you know, both the physical, you know, and policy world around us really shapes how young people are able to, you know, if they're able to grow up with a lot of opportunity or not very much opportunity. So this has sort of been my, I know that there's ethics questions coming up later, but this has sort of been my moral compass. Anyways, it's been a roller coaster for me trying to figure out how to best impact the world that I occupy. I started out, I actually went to, if anyone gets a chance to go to this CUTC, it's the Canadian Undergraduate Technology Conference. That really launched my career. I won I won an interview at Deloitte from a speaking contest. So that ended up being my first job at Deloitte, which was a little bit different from the engineering world that I was in previously. Then my now husband decided that he wanted to go and study at Oxford. So I went over to London for a year and worked at a big kind of startup software company. Didn't love that very much. Decided to go and work at the University of Oxford in their engineering department, which was really fun. I directed their first outreach program for 3 years. And then after that, I decided I'd jump back into very traditional engineering. I worked at a company called Jacobs, which is actually a really big engineering company in Canada, but it's not very well known because they just took over a company called CH2M, which is a water company. But Jacobs itself is a huge company that does, you know, everything from aerospace to water quality to strategy. It's a huge company. And then I was seconded, which is like a fancy word for, I was like farmed out to the TTC to do business strategy work for them, which was not work that I thought that I would like to go back to, but I did. And now I work for the TTC as a permanent employee, and I'm called a business efficiencies consultant, which basically means that I try to bring the TTC, maybe not into the 21st century, but at least into the 20th century. And that's my journey so far. I should mention I'm really involved, sort of like outside. I've got lots of interests outside of work. I just finished up something called the Action Canada Fellowship, which is for sort of people who are in mid-career who are interested in policy and governance. I decided to get involved in that because I'm really involved politically, locally in my area. I'm the president of of one of the local parties. And I have a YouTube channel, which is called Gabby on Government, named after myself, where I talk about kind of civics 101. So if you want to learn all about the difference between majority and minority governments and who the queen is, you can come on over to my channel.
Thanks, Gabby. That's really interesting. Jessica, did you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me okay? Hopefully their time is a charm. Gabrielle, that's so fun. I didn't know that you were an Action Canada fellow too.
Are you a fellow as well?
Yeah, 13, 14. What's your
No way. Oh my, well, we'll have to connect after this.
It is an excellent program for those of you that are interested in understanding how public policy works. You know, I'm working from the field of technology. I didn't really know much, and I felt like I learned a lot by just being exposed to that environment. So yeah, and then you get to connect with wonderful people like Gabrielle here. Okay, so my background, I did a bachelor degree in engineering. I was born in Mexico. I started my co-op was on metal manufacturing. When I graduated, I worked for a Japanese company in the automotive space. I specialize in quality control and manufacturing. Then I decided that I wanted to expand my horizons. So I moved to Canada to do a master's degree, Master's of Engineering, Entrepreneurship and Innovation at McMaster University. In there, I partnered with a very smart scientist from McMaster University, working in the Department of Engineering Physics, and we started a solar spin-off out of the university. So we were working as entrepreneurs. Mars was supporting the efforts of this university spin-off. So Mars Discovery District being an innovation hub located in Toronto. When we concluded our research, Mars hired me to support their clean tech market intelligence efforts. And I will say that my mindset is always trying to, I have an entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial bug in me. So I always been created or co-creating the initiatives that I am part of. So while I was doing market intelligence, I decided to partake on a new initiative. So together, a colleague of mine and myself, we started something called the Advanced Energy Center. So co-created that. The idea here was to help entrepreneurs in the clean energy space to expand outside of Canada. Then after that, I went to work for the automotive sector again, but now automotive on steroids, as I like to call it, because we're looking now at the future of transportation, right? Connected, autonomous, but also intelligent transportation systems. I led an initiative called Autonomous Vehicles Innovation Center from a program management perspective. Pretty large file, $85 million. It's a huge commitment, but it was very, very interesting. And after that, I decided that, I've done policy, I have done business development, partnerships, I've done engineering. So the one piece that I was missing in the puzzle was strategy. So then I went and I joined the strategy team at Telos. And what I'm doing there right now is helping the organization understand where do we want to grow, how do we want to expand as a business, and that's in a particular area of Internet of Things. And so I'm the 5G prime for the IoT team at Telos now. So very interesting fields. I will say that what keeps me motivated and aligned is I've always had a very strong environmental angle and also a very strong social impact oriented focus that it just prevails throughout my career. So very different approaches, but what remains the same is this interest to make a difference.
Well, thank you to our three panelists for those lovely introductions. I have the next question, which is, what advice would you give to students planning their future profession? We can start with Julia.
Sure, yeah. I forgot to mention during my introduction there that since March 2020, so like right before the pandemic hit, I've been working part-time in the forensics industry. So it's for this company called 30 Forensics that is based out of Toronto, but they have offices all over Canada. And it's I'm in the injured biomechanics group. So we look at kind of the nature of how people injured their injuries and try and protect against that. So in terms of advice to students, I think trying as many different things as possible, especially while you're an undergrad, was a good piece of advice that I got, because you get a little bit of taste of everything and you can see what fits. You never know what you might get out of any volunteer work that you participate in or who you might meet. When I first came to McMaster University, I didn't really know anyone here. So I joined our graduate committee, and it really got kind of me interested in governments and policy. And I met a lot of my really good friends through that as well. I would also say it's never too early to put your name out if you're interested in a specific industry. So whether that be like attending conferences or contacting people in your field, that's kind of how I got started at 30 Forensics. And it's been a nice little introduction into industry while I complete school.
Thank you for that, Julia. Gabrielle, would you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I definitely echo everything that Julia said, especially getting industry experience. I think it's so important to understand what life, if you ever want to go into industry, I think that's really important to have a taste of as many different places as you can. The one thing that I don't think that I knew when I was in my undergrad and wish that I knew, maybe even I wish that I knew in high school, but is to tailor tailor your career goals not to the subject matter, but to what your what your personal strengths and interests are, and that's more task oriented. So I mean, I could work at Tesla, which I think is a really, really cool company. But if I don't, if I'm working on, like programming and I'm in a cubicle by myself, which is something that, doesn't super interest me, I'm not going to be having a good time. So the subject matter is really cool, but the task is not so cool. So make sure that you're developing those skills to make sure that you get to do the tasks that you like, even if the subject matter isn't, maybe so flashy, because you'll enjoy yourself so much more if you're doing tasks that you enjoy rather than, I've worked for really cool companies and really hated my life. So I don't want that to happen to you. The other thing is on top of prioritizing tasks over subject matter, I'd also highly prioritize the team that I'm with over both tasks and subject matter. I have worked at places where the tasks that I'm doing are objectively interesting to me. The subject matter is objectively quite cool, but I'm working with people that I really don't like. So, I mean, it can be really tough when you're first starting out because, it's hard to just get a job in the first place. But, once you do have a job under your belt, or if you're one of those really lucky people that gets multiple job offers, really pay attention to who your manager is, like who's interviewing you, and really pay attention to who the team is going to be, because the people that you're with can make your life amazing and wonderful and exciting, and you're happy to come into work every day, or it can make it the exact opposite. And I've experienced both.
Thanks, Gabby. Jessica, did you want to go?
Yeah, that's a great observation. I think you also can learn a lot from your team members, right? So if you have the opportunity to choose people that will complement your skill sets, definitely. I'm biased. I work in the startup ecosystem and entrepreneurial space for so long that I will say my advice is try to start something, whether it's your own startup or your own initiative. There are so many different models, but I will say just start something, because there is nothing like there is, from my perspective, nothing that is going to align more to your passion, values, will teach you how to start something from scratch, all legal frameworks that are required, how to put together a team, how to manage balance sheets. Like starting something will give you all the insight that will be required probably in the future when you're working for a company and you're looking to scale and to grow. You will now learn to understand what are some of the priorities that need to happen from like anything from like your KPIs all the way to aligning with the company's mission and vision. So right now, students, you have a little bit of the luxury of the time, a little bit of luxury to experiment. McMaster is a fantastic university that offers many opportunities for students to try. There are so many partnerships that the university has with industry players, as well as innovation centers that are within the campus. And then the best part is all the grants funds available for young professionals or students. So definitely take advantage of it. It doesn't matter, if you make it or not. The idea here is to try to learn, because that will give you visibility into everything that makes a company successful or not. And learning from that is extremely valuable. That would be my perspective.
Before we go on with the next question, I think I saw someone raise their hand. So if you want to unmute your mic and ask a question, you can feel free to do so.
Yeah, I actually had a question for Gabrielle when she was talking about making sure that you have the skills to sort of be able to do the tasks that you want and not just work for the company that you're interested in. So I'm sort of having this dilemma right now. Do you think it would be, in this case, do you think it's more valuable to maybe gain work experience in like areas that may not be necessarily your not field of interest, but just like your interests? Or do you think it's better to focus more on just like learning as many technical skills as you can so that in the future you can apply for those internships that you want? So I guess sort of the question is like, do you think it's more valuable to have those technical skills or practical work experience if you had to choose one or the other?
Oh, that's such a good question. Because, unfortunately, I mean, in a perfect world, I would say, oh, just work on your technical skills. Everything's going to be fine. But branding really plays a big role in your future career and can really change your trajectory. So, I mean, I hope some of the other panelists can chime in on this because I'm not sure. Ben, definitely feel free to add me on LinkedIn. We can talk about this in more detail. I love these sorts of questions. It's really I mean, it's going to depend on how well you know yourself to a degree. If you have, if you're quite certain about the direction that you want to go and the skills that you want to have, you can tailor your experience to that. But if you're really unsure and you kind of you're really in an exploratory phase, you might choose a different path. And I'm sorry that's not very straightforward, but it's so dependent on your situation.
Awesome, thank you.
I don't know if Julia and Jessica has any, because I think this is a great question. I don't know if they have any other.
Ben, can you elaborate a little bit more? Like what kind of, what do you have in mind?
So I have a really strong interest in like programming and things like that. I'm actually in mechatronics engineering, which is kind of focused around like robotics and things like that. So there is a software component to it, but that's not like the complete focus. So when I'm trying to apply for like software development internships or things like that, it's there's quite a bit of competition between myself and people who actually focus in like software engineering per se. So naturally, they're probably going to develop more technical skills like in their coursework and things like that, which allow them to get these internships. And a lot of the internships that are sort of more available to me right now are less programming focused. So maybe they're like quality assurance or like product management or something. So not necessarily in like related to programming and things like that. So I guess my question is more so, if I were to maybe take the summer off and just focus on building up, like, let's say, as many programming languages as I can possibly learn, is that a better option? Or should I try to aim for those job positions like quality assurance or product management that may not necessarily have to do with programming, but will let me gain some valuable work experience? So which one do you think would be more valuable in the long run?
It is such a, I totally understand that because it's such a chicken and egg situation, right? When you graduate, the companies want you to have experience. I will say, like try your best to get into these opportunities that can give you what you're looking for, right? It sounds like you have a clear mindset of where you want to go. If there are like opportunities that are, like you wanna polish those particular skills, just like keep trying and keep looking for it. And if it doesn't, if it is super competitive, then maybe like you can try either adding those to your curriculum yourself, or again, like maybe try starting something with your friends. But the kind of skill sets that you're mentioning, by the way, are super required right now. So I can offer, if you go to the Mars website, which is my previous employer, so marsdd.com, check out the job opportunities there. The entrepreneurs are looking, they are excited to get the type of talent and interest that you're expressing right now. So it's just a matter of maybe I will apply myself more on trying to find the right opportunity so you can get both.
Awesome.
Don't compromise. Don't compromise your passion and your talent.
Oh, 100%. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I would kind of echo that. I know when you're starting your career too, it's easy to just kind of like take whatever's thrown at you. But I do think it's important to try and be a little bit picky, because that could snowball into like a whole different pathway that you're not really interested in, but the opportunities are kind of there, so you just go for it, you know? So I think it's important to be a little bit picky when you're starting out, but at the same time, I wonder if there's other ways that you can build your technical skills while you're working at another job. Like I know Cornell's got a bunch of online courses right now that are for free, so maybe you can earn a couple certificates to add that to your resume while you're working in one of those jobs. Yeah, it's a tough one.
You mentioned volunteering, right, Julia? And I think volunteering is another way as well to be seen.
Mm-hmm. And also, yeah, my last thing that I was going to say was, yeah, you come from a different background, but I would almost use that to your advantage. Like think about the other things that you can bring to the table. I mean, like you seem like a pretty well-spoken person. So that's something that you could like bring to an interview room and, you know, try and talk your way into the job.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Thanks guys for the advice.
Okay, great question, Ben. I guess moving on to our set list of questions. What has been the most difficult or interesting project you've taken on?
I'm gonna let someone else start this time around.
Gabrielle, do you want to take these? I'll follow you.
Sure. I'll go first. Probably. I mean, I've dealt with some. I've dealt with. I think dealing with difficult people is definitely like, you know, the most emotionally, and if I'm being honest, like probably the most difficult problems that I've solved in engineering are the ones that kind of affect you the most, I think. But you know, from so I don't bore you. Something that's more concrete. When I started at the University of Oxford and was the first director of their outreach program, Jessica can probably feels this with, you know, I wouldn't say that it was entrepreneurial, but when you're starting something from scratch, and you don't have any direction, there's no one to kind of put up any barriers or guidelines. I think that's the most difficult thing that I've dealt with, just because you don't, you really have to have some confidence in yourself, that you're going to make the right decisions. You have to be really wise about whose advice you take. So I think that in my career, you know, that's not the only time this has happened, but you know, when you've got a problem that people are trusting you to solve and there's no clear guidelines, I think that's the most difficult part. And you know, I feel like I'm in a job interview, how I overcame that is just by having some self-trust and doing lots of research. So it's trying to build confidence, remembering the confidence that I have, remembering the, all the great experience that I bring to the table, and also building up my own confidence by doing research and making sure that I'm well prepared and can defend the direction that I decide to go.
Sorry, just the question is the most difficult, or what was the question again?
The most difficult or interesting project you've taken on.
Most difficult or interesting project. I've taken, again, different approaches to different projects. I've worked with, I will say most challenging is managing very large files. I mentioned one of them, a multi-million-dollar file with multiple stakeholders. Same thing, starting initiatives from scratch. So I will say that one of the things that I enjoy the most, but it's also challenging, is starting everything from the very beginning, just basically giving a contract and then you run with it. Assembling teams, managing budgets, developing programming. Culture is one of the most challenging things, I will say. You really need to understand what motivates people. You really need to put yourself on people's shoes. you need to learn how to act as a advisor, a mentor, or sometimes yourself have to, like, you know, grab someone's hands and walk together through it. That type of skill set is something that I encourage everybody, including myself, to just keep practicing on, because of, you know, everything else can be done as long as you have, or you're willing to put the time on things, as long as you know, you have a brain, you have a good head on your shoulder, like you can do anything. It's just, but convincing people that something is worth doing, spending time, is probably one of the most challenging things, and something that I myself try to improve every day, and I encourage people to practice as well. So it's a soft skill that is going, I believe, is going to be very much required as we continue to move forward, and it's not replaceable. This is something that you're not going to replace anytime soon with AI or machine learning. It's just going to continue to be required. So that's probably what I think. I work with a lot of people, and understanding the motivation, understanding how to navigate through different cultures and mindsets is challenging.
Yeah, those are both really good answers that I would agree with. I think the most probably technically difficult project that I've worked on is probably my PhD research project. So as I mentioned, it's in partnership with DRDC, which is the defense sector of the government. And we're working to design safety standards for ballistic shields. So these shields, they absorb incoming projectiles or bullet, and that absorption causes the back face to deflect, and that deflection can injure people's upper extremity. So we're trying to model that deflection back in our lab at McMaster University from experimental data that we collected at DRDC's testing facility in Quebec. And there's just been lots of hurdles, especially with equipment failure. And one of the questions that I think we skipped in this panel was the biggest lesson that you've learned. And I think through this project, I've kind of learned the importance of resilience, and how if it worked the first time and you probably did it wrong. So I just really think it's important to keep chugging along and try and keep a good attitude. And sometimes, you know, you get thrown some curveballs like global pandemic, and you're just kind of forced to adapt your project or change your scope of things, and maybe focus more on like the modeling side of things and shifting your mindset. So I think this year especially has been challenging for a lot of students, especially in undergrad. So I'll just say that sometimes the challenges are the most rewarding, because then you can really appreciate all the progress you've made through all the hurdles.
Yeah, great advice.
Thank you for that from everyone. That was really great advice. I'll start off with our fourth question of the panel. How has ethics impacted how you've navigated your career?
I'll nominate Jessica for this one.
Yeah, so I think I did mention a little bit at the beginning. Basically, my entire career has been driven under the ability or possibility to make an impact, either societal or an environmental impact, and that's how I have led my decisions. It's funny, I had one session when I got invited to talk about clean tech. I work in the clean tech space for 7 years, and this senior person wanted to learn more about it. At the end of the conversation, he was so excited about, you know, like, well, maybe, I don't know, got interested in the way that I express myself or found something interesting about my experience and personality, that ended up offering me a job. But the interesting part of the job offer is that it was to work for an oil and gas company, which I found very funny, because my entire talk was about, replacing or fossil fuels and moving on, towards a greener future. So it's, and it was an excellent job, by the way. I'm thankful for the opportunity, feeling grateful. But this is the way that I have decided to lead my life. These are the values that I have honor, and I will continue to do so. And yes, there are going to be great opportunities like that with good roles, well paid, you name it. But it is clear to me what I am standing for, and I think I will just continue doing that for the rest of my life. So yeah, you get to put to test as you go in your career. There are gonna be a couple of tests, but I think as long as you're clear what you're standing for, this part is not gonna be compromised ever.
I can go. Oh, Julia and I are having the Canadian standoff. You go ahead,
Yeah,
Julia.
seriously. Okay. As someone who's just kind of starting her career, I kind of struggled to answer this one about how ethics has had an impact. And then I started thinking about kind of the experimental work I do. So in my research, we do a lot of work with cadaveric specimens. So obviously we're making sure everything's ethically sourced and cared for appropriately. And part of my master's work was looking into foot and ankle injuries and as it relates to how safety assessments are conducted. And through more research with that, I've found out that there's actually quite a gender difference between the rate of injury of females versus males in car crashes. So it was a little bit of like an ethical kind of like shift that was focused on a conference that I attended last year about how we need to develop better safety systems that are appropriate for women. So that's kind of like the only really ethical interaction I've had in the research field, but I think it's an important step that needs to be considered.
Yeah, I was when I was reading about this, this topic and this question, I took one philosophy class in my undergrad, and so I know that there's a difference between morals and ethics. And ethics are a set of like external codes that you follow. So companies will often have they'll have a code of ethics. And morals are like your own kind of personal compass. And I think as engineers, we're really lucky that oftentimes, I mean, we all take ethics course in our undergrad. We have to take an ethics exam. So I think we're sort of lucky that ethics in a lot of ways are really ingrained and we don't have to think about them that much. I'm sort of with Julia where it doesn't come up that much in my day-to-day life. Now what Jessica was talking about does come up a lot in my day-to-day life. It's like, what kind of work am I going to be engaged in? What are my values? What do I value? And I think that something I really wish that I thought about more in university is, what are my values? What am I all about? Like getting to know yourself more, because I mean, you can fit yourself into all sorts of different types of boxes and tell yourself that you like this kind of work, tell yourself that you like that kind of work. But if it becomes really hard to answer the question of what do you want to do if you don't have a good understanding of what your own values are, what you believe. I'm going through some moral questions. I go through moral questions with the type of work that I do. And one thing that I thought was interesting, I took this sustainability course when I was in the UK. And one of the most interesting things that I've thought about a lot, and I don't know if anyone else has any opinions on this, but the keynote speaker said, he was from Coca-Cola, so he's biased. But he said, go out and find, it was, sorry, I've got to back up. It was a course for people who wanted to be like sustainability leaders. And he said, go out and find the biggest, baddest company you can, and change it from the inside. That's my work with, policy and government. That's, and joining the TTC, I don't think is like an inherently, is not an evil organization whatsoever. They do a lot of good, but there are a lot of issues with the TTC when I say TTC, I say Toronto Transit Commission, the people that do the subways in Toronto. I joined the TTC because it's an organization that I don't think is always particularly fun to work with. I know that this is being recorded, so I hope my employers don't see this, but I do think it's really important work. So people, you're all in your undergraduate degrees. one thing I really took for granted when I was in my undergrad, and even in my early career, was how much energy I had at that point, and how much how almost not like what's a better word, like not naive, but like you see the best in the world, especially like I still do to a large extent, but then even more. So I think that if you're really careful and you really know yourself and you're really strong in your values, I think that one of the best ways that you can kind of make change in the world, if that's what you want to do, is to join these companies that are kind of big and bad and change them from the inside. But it's not for everyone, and it can be really draining. Like I'm going through that right now at the TTC, is that the type of work that I'm doing is difficult and the work is really slow, like kind of what you'd expect for kind of the what is very stereotypical in a public organization. But I try to remind myself that it's important work. So yeah, different routes you can take, but there's I think that the biggest moral challenges that we face as engineers is like, what type of work do we become involved with?
Yeah, I guess that the pandemic has made it very clear that there are certain priorities that we need to take into consideration as a society right now. Like everybody needs access to clean water, to food, safe housing. Nowadays, we're struggling to access nature. Like all these basics are so important right now. Being able to communicate and see our relatives in one way or another. So what the pandemic has done is really highlighted some of the key areas that as humanity we need to function, that we took for granted. And I believe that this is something that younger generations should take into consideration as they look into their next opportunities. If that doesn't exist, then again, go ahead and try to experiment, build a pilot, or try to launch your own thing. But those priorities are more relevant than ever these days, and they are just going to continue to be that way. So take that into consideration, the way that the planet is guiding us.
Okay, great. I think you guys all kind of touched on it a little bit, but how has COVID-19 impacted your work life right now, and how have your companies adapted?
I can go first for this one. I touched on it a little bit, but every time that there was a shutdown or anything to do with any sort of lockdown in Ontario, DRDC kind of totally shut down their facilities, their government facilities. So there were some delays in my research project. But my supervisor and I kind of like chatted about it and pivoted a little bit and decided to pursue like a continuation from some of my master's work. So it gave me a good opportunity to explore different avenues, I guess. I definitely at first did not like working from home, as I used to really try and keep my home and work life separate. Like even when I had to do homework in undergrad, I would always go to the library to do it. Like I would really try not to do work at home. But that obviously is not possible anymore. So now I'm finding it a little bit challenging to kind of relax when I'm at home, and especially in academia, because these are such like long projects. I feel like there is always something you can be doing to be moving yourself forward. So at first it was hard for me to kind of like turn off, and every time that I was at home, I felt like I should be doing work, which led to a pretty quick burnout. So now I feel like I'm trying to get better at just writing a to-do list of what I want to do for that day, and then when that's done, stopping.
Yeah, that's great advice. I still need to follow that. For me, I think the organizations I work with have adapted really well. What was new is that I joined TELUS 3 months ago. So I went from an organization that had like around 250 employees to 65,000 employees, and being onboarded virtually, not knowing other maybe like 1 or 2 people, my manager and someone else, it's been really challenging. So what I ended up doing is just trying to spend as much time as possible understanding people's roles, their responsibilities, and then just like what I will do on a personal basis, just invite people for coffee. What I'm doing is just like making the best out of the chat tool, adding everybody to LinkedIn to like see their activity, get to know them on a professional basis. And yeah, like just caring about people in general, asking questions always, how is your day? But yeah, connecting with people, it's definitely a more difficult task these days, and especially in an organization the size of the one I work for right now. Yeah, I miss working from coffees. That was my thing. I always work from coffee places, so I am looking forward to, drinking my coffee, watch out to the street, and continue. Background noise.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you. Yeah, I think that it's really, I think that for good managers, it's highlighted the importance of mental health. I think that's been really tough this year. Until very recently, I was working at a 700 square feet I was like touching my bed as I worked, and I was in the bedroom, my husband was in the living room. It was really brutal. But on top of that, I mean, everyone can probably, I mean, you're all, I guess, oh man, for the students this year, I can't even imagine. I would love to hear all of your experience of what you're going through right now. But, if you're in Hamilton, you have experience with public transit, very likely, if you've ever been in the Toronto area, and transit is, I just find it to be one of the most extremely, important things to our society, something that Canada is really, really bad at. And with COVID, you can imagine that the levels of public transit have significantly decreased, and it's making it really difficult to pay for things. So luckily the government has infused a lot of money into transit, but I won't go into too much detail, but anyways, there are going to be a lot of financial challenges that come up in the transit world that we haven't really felt the brunt of yet. At least I haven't. The TTC laid off a lot of employees. Most of them are back, thankfully, now. But there are lots of engineering industries that are affected by, directly by COVID, and certainly transit is one of them.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't considered, and yeah, so true. And I mean, the three of us are all in a position where we're lucky, like we haven't lost employment during the pandemic, but I can't even imagine coupling that on top of everything that's going on. Like, it must be pretty hard.
That's true. Kudos to everybody that is on the front lines and are really just helping our society continue the work.
And all you students who are at home and just trying your best to get through this year, like engineering is so hard as it is, and you guys are doing an amazing job to get through it. In these circumstances, I think that it would have been too much for me.
Yeah. New times. It is okay to say that you're not okay, by the way, and reach out to your support groups.
Well, thank you guys for answering that question. That concludes all the questions that Sheridan and I have prepared for this panel. We will open the floor up to ask questions to the panelists in a bit. We are just going to go over the awards for the National Engineering Month project showcase that we had for the past 2 weeks. If Sheridan, you want to pull up the slide. Yes. So this year we had 4 honorable mentions and a first, second, and third place. And after careful consideration, hopefully the people that have presented in the showcase are here, but we'll just show you who won what. So one of the honorable mentions is for Alexander Berriaver I'm sorry again if I mispronounce your name. But yeah, his project was basically a passive magnitude control system, which was really cool. Another honorable mention that we have is for the self-bouncing robot created by Mathematicians. The third honorable mention that we have is the task coin created by Fatim Kalogo, Yuseon Jang, Ali Umar, and Jeffrey Wong. And the last fourth honorable mention is Bite Size, which was created. It's a non-profit organization that we really like the idea of, created by Isra Zahid, Tammy Zhang, and Samia Anwar. And then in third place, we chose the Wave Direct app, which was created by Wally Pai. In second place, we have the Patient to Doctor app, which is created by Ben Sun, Matthew Walker, Akram Hanouf, and Sheridan Fong. And in first place, we have the Camera Chef app, which was created by Daniel Chia, Joshua Wilkinson, Luke Liu, and Hannah Hugh. One of the MES members will be in contact with you guys if you're here to claim your prizes. But thank you to everyone who submitted their project. It was really cool to look over all of them. And I guess now we will just open the floor up to anyone who has questions for our panelists.
I'm now curious. I want to see what are all these new startups that are coming out and apps. What is Camera Chef?
Yeah, Jessica, you're going to tell them all about Mars.
Yeah.
If any of the winners are here and would like to talk about their project, just unmute yourself and talk about it.
Well, I guess since you can see me on camera, I guess I can't really just pretend that I'm not here. So I guess I'll talk about Patient to Doctor. So, I mean, Sheridan's also a creator on this one, so she could have talked about it as well. But anyways, so essentially Patient to Doctor was an idea we had for a hackathon. So this entire project was built within the span of about 24 hours, actually. And the idea behind it was that we're all biomedical engineers. And we recognized that there was an issue with like patients attending their doctor's appointments and not being able to provide accurate information about like what had occurred. So like symptoms leading up to the appointment, things like that. Because usually when you book a doctor's appointment, like earliest you can get it is maybe like a week, 2 weeks. So a lot of the times you'll forget things, or there'll be a lot of things that happen, so that sort of the information you provide to your doctor won't be as accurate. And then on the other hand, when you leave your appointments, you might not remember all of the things that your doctor has recommended to you. So the idea behind Patient to Doctor is that we've created an online database that allows patients and doctors to update patient profiles with all of their records from their appointments, and then patients can also update their profiles with information leading up to their appointments. So the idea behind this is that we streamline communication between doctors and their patients for more accurate and more efficient healthcare and treatment options, right? Because with more accurate information, the better the diagnoses. So that's the general idea behind it. So we had Sheridan working on like the HTML, the front end. So she's designed this wonderful website. It's really nice looking. I'll be sure to add all of you on LinkedIn so that you can see it. I made a post about it recently. And then I had a lot of fun working on the backend components using Python and then the Flask framework, all that sort of thing. I won't go too much into the specifications, but that's the general idea behind it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's, you know what, it is a great pain point. Every time I try to book an appointment, definitely it's like a very minimum a week ahead what I need. So good stuff. Congrats.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah,
That's
great
really
idea.
cool, Ben and Sheridan. Congrats.
Thank you.
Have you guys thought at all about incorporating like health data from smartwatches or anything like that? Or is that a step too far?
Definitely one of our next steps was we wanted to include sort of like a we were trying to come up with like a mental health aspect to it, like maybe like a journal entry or things like that, just because that's like a really prevalent subject. Definitely at the time, it was kind of hard to sort of be able to incorporate all of these ideas just because of A, the time constraint, and B, this was actually
when you have that 25th hour.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, definitely given the time, we would have loved to include definitely information from sensors like smartwatches and things like that would definitely be a great way, because that kind of reduces like the fact that patients have to go on and update it themselves, right? They'd just be able to, all this this entire process would just be automated. So yeah, that's actually it's definitely a good idea. I'll cite you, don't worry.
No, that's an amazing one. Good for you guys. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm excited to read more about it on LinkedIn.
Thanks for sharing, Ben. Okay, so we have a poll that we're going to launch for now. Terrell, do you want to launch that poll?
Yep, there we go. Let me know if everyone can see it.
Yeah, I can see it. Okay, so that kind of concludes our event. Thank you all for coming out today. I hope you all learned a lot. Thank you again to the panelists for answering all of our questions and being so engaging. Thank you all for coming, and to stay updated with the MES, you can check out the Mac Eng Society website at macensociety.ca or our Instagram at Mac Eng Society. Also, if you'd like to attend more NEM events, you can check out the NEM website. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Maya and Sheridan. Take care.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for the invite. Nice meeting you
Thanks for
too.
coming.
Nice meeting all of you.
Bye, everybody. Great event.
Bye.